Mrs. Patel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ambassador Abdul Hadi, Special Rapporteurs, and the Commissioner and Mrs. Bhutto for your very, very articulate interventions. For almost 13 months now, we have witnessed the brutality of Israel's settler colonial genocidal assault against the Palestinian people in Gaza. But this is only the most violent manifestation of the ongoing 76-year-long Nakba and the apartheid that has been inflicted upon the entirety of the Palestinian people across the geography and in the diaspora, who are not allowed to return. For those of us who have followed this genocidal onslaught on our screens for the past 13 months, we're all too familiar with the haunting pleas from Palestinian journalists who are being brutally targeted as we speak for broadcasting their own destruction in real time. The first 11 pages of the 649-page list of identified matters released by the Health Ministry in September were names of Palestinian children who hadn't yet reached the age of 1. But you all already know this and more, because in line with the UNSC Resolution 2334, since January 2017, the Council and members have received monthly updates on the situation in Palestine. Member states have also been given ample documented evidence through the special procedures, the commissioners, the ICJ, who have all been establishing fact patterns and analyzing them legally. The Palestinians have been documenting this for over 76 years now. So lack of knowledge is really not the concern here. So I will not actually talk about in this intervention, which is an urgent call to action to stop the genocide and end the settler colonial apartheid regime and occupation, upon an appeal to your morality by detailing the loss of Palestinian lives or Palestinians in arbitrary detention, of the extensively documented mass torture or forced displacement or continued starvation and famine. If that was a factor in consideration, we would not have had to witness Palestinian children being blown to smithereens by 2,000-pound bombs. We wouldn't still be here calling for a ceasefire 13 months later. Instead, what I want to do is outline the legal consequences and responsibilities for third states for failing to prevent and punish the crime of genocide that Israel is committing, the illegality of Israel's continued presence in the OPT, tantamount to aggression, its breach of Article 3 of CERD amounting to racial segregation and apartheid, its violation of peremptory norms, including the prohibition of acquisition of territory by force, and the Palestinian people's right to self-determination, all of which are legal findings of the International Court of Justice, which is the UN court, your court. Findings that the Palestinian people, again, have been articulating for decades now. The ICJ's historic advisory opinion of 19 July rendered the occupation of the Palestinian territory unlawful. The Assembly resolution that followed in September demanded an end to this occupation within a year and called on states to comply with their obligations under international law. The court affirmed that the states have an obligation, not to recognize as legal this situation, including the violation of Article 3 of CERD, and not to render aid or assistance in maintaining the situation. And even though the ICJ advisory opinion is restricted to the 1967 borders because of the request from the General Assembly, understanding the systematic nature of apartheid and racial segregation means recognizing that it applies to the entirety of the Palestinian people as a whole, including the refugees that have been denied the right of return. The Commission of Inquiry's position paper on the ICJ advisory opinion, which has extensively detailed the obligations of states to act individually and collectively, including by building political, economic, and cultural pressure on the Israeli government to end this unlawful occupation. It also states that member states can be found complicit in the internationally wrongful acts because of aiding and abetting this process. So at this point, after all of these preliminary measures, orders from the ICJ and the advisory opinion, the most basic ask, 13 months in, not least because of the ongoing genocide, is a complete embargo on the boycotting, selling, and transfer of arms, munitions, and related equipment, as outlined in the UNGA resolution. It is not only an obligation that arises from the advisory opinion, but also from the duties of states to prevent and punish the crime of genocide, as outlined in the Convention and the preliminary measures orders in the South Africa versus Israel case. In Nicaragua versus Germany, the ICJ has also reminded member states that both the Genocide Convention, along with all the Geneva Conventions, reiterate this obligation of not to transfer arms to parties of an armed conflict, because otherwise states could be found complicit in this conflict, in this genocide. This restriction on arms also extends to military training, research, development cooperation with Israel that supports the unlawful occupation. And I would add racial segregation and apartheid across the territory. The ICJ, along with states parties that made interventions in the case, also emphasized on the prolonged nature of the occupation, longest in the post-World War II history. This prolonged nature of the occupation, along with the entrenched settler colonial apartheid regime, the infrastructure built around it, the annexation of vast territories, including through illegal settlements and colonies, and legislative changes that have taken place around this, mean that today, the possibility of making a distinction between Israel and its operations in the OPT is nearly impossible. The Commission of Inquiry in their position paper also critically identified this burden of proof of making this distinction now lies on Israel. Therefore, third states that are actually dealing with any of these entities in Israel have the obligation to make clear this distinction. Otherwise, they will be found complicit in this wrongful act. Beyond arms, this obligation of non-assistance also includes areas of economic, diplomatic, cultural, and academic relations. Third states are obliged to cease all financial, trade, investment, and economic relations with Israel that maintain or support the unlawful occupation and the apartheid. War economies are usually organized such that making this distinction between financial institutions that are located in Israel and not contributing to the unlawful presence of Israel in the OPT is nearly impossible. Therefore, banks, financial institutions, and other such institutions stand complicit in the maintenance of this unlawful situation, and third states therefore have a duty to not trade with them, to not be complicit in accordance with the ICJ orders. States are also obliged not to provide aid to academic, research, or cultural institutions that support the occupation. And here again, we draw on the extensive work done by Palestinian colleagues and academics for decades now that trace the direct connection between Israeli academia and the armed forces that operate in the OPT, making it impossible to, again, identify this distinction. Where does one stop and the other begin? All these obligations are not just incumbent on states for their own action, but also extend to all persons and corporations that are domiciled in the jurisdictions of states. Having adequate legislation at the national level to hold individuals and corporations that are engaged in rendering aid and assistance to the unlawful situation are therefore prerequisites for states to have in place now. At the same time, having legislation that respects the freedom of expression and assembly and does not criminalize support for Palestinian rights, something that the special rapporteurs have outlined in their statement a few weeks ago, including criminalizing Palestinian support for measures outlined by the ICJ, such as boycotts, divestments, and sanctions, is now in direct contravention to the advisory opinion. Finally, we have witnessed this for decades now, but especially over the last year, Israel has systematically infringed upon its duties towards the UN, violating protections afforded to UN bodies such as UNRWA and UNIFIL, reflected in the unprecedented number of UN staff members killed and the repeated assaults on UN facilities across the geography. The latest Israeli legislation banning UNRWA, as many of you have rightly pointed out, is absolutely outrageous. Other than being in direct contravention to the 3 ICJ preliminary measures orders, this action is also in violation of Article 5 of the UN, 105 of the UN Charter. Condemnation is not sufficient for this absolutely devastating impact that it will have on the Palestinian people. Furthermore, Israel's refusal to engage with UN mechanisms, not allowing visits from special rapporteurs and independent commissions of inquiries, attacking them, declaring the Secretary General persona non grata, flouting rules of the UNGA and multiple Security Council resolutions are all violations of Article 25 of the UN Charter. Therefore, in line with the Charter, member states, for the sake of maintaining international peace and security, must suspend Israel from the UN General Assembly. This is not an exceptional ask. This is not specific to one state or another. It has in fact been undertaken before for the apartheid regime in South Africa and several other states in different forums of the UN. Because we are at a critical juncture now, the stability along with the legitimacy of this post-World War II international legal order is hanging by a thread, if it still exists. This is a direct result of decades of impunity extended to the State of Israel. We as Palestinian civil society organizations, along with our allies, are working on bringing these legal obligations that I have discussed to all the mechanisms available to us internationally, but also and importantly, nationally. Submitting communications to the ICC, to the special procedures, to the commissioners, and bringing national litigation as and where is necessary. The protests on the streets and the campuses and the docks and the weapon factories are visible manifestations of these efforts and a clear sign that this movement will only continue to grow until we reach liberation. The genocide on the ground continues unabated, the occupation worsens, and the apartheid is more entrenched than ever before. How member states that are sitting in this chamber today respond to their legal obligations that have come through all the legal work that has been done, including bringing an end to the occupation, the apartheid, dismantling the settlements and colonies, returning the land back to the Palestinians, allowing Palestinian refugees to return, will only determine the credibility of this institution and this multilateral system in general. And ensuring Palestinian people's inalienable right to self-determination, liberation, is the only way forward out of the situation we find ourselves in today. Thank you.
Mrs.